The sun dipped low over the rolling hills of Willow Creek Ranch, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson. My ranch, a 50-acre slice of heaven in rural Montana, was my sanctuary. The centerpiece was a crystal-clear lake fed by a natural spring, perfect for fishing, swimming, or, as I planned that evening, camping under the stars. I'd hauled my old canvas tent, a cooler of beer, and my fishing gear to the lake's edge, ready for a quiet night away from the world. Little did I know, my peace was about to be shattered. I just pitched my tent when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A sleek black SUV rolled up, followed by a sheriff's cruiser, lights flashing but silent. Out stepped Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, HOA. Her lips pursed like she'd bitten a lemon. Behind her, Deputy Mike Larson, a guy I'd known since high school, looked uncomfortable, his hand resting casually on his belt. "Mr. Callahan," Karen began, her voice dripping with authority, "you're in violation of HOA regulations. Camping is not permitted on this property." I laughed, assuming it was a misunderstanding. "Karen, this is my land. I've owned it for 10 years. The HOA has no jurisdiction here." Her eyes narrowed. "The lake is part of the community commons. You can't just set up camp like some vagabond." Deputy Larson cleared his throat. "Jake, she called us out here. Said you were trespassing. I gotta follow up, you know?" I stared, dumbfounded. "Trespassing on my own property?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the digital copy of my deed, which clearly outlined the lake as part of my private acreage. "Mike, look at this. The lake's mine, always has been." Karen crossed her arms. "That's outdated. The HOA annexed the lake for community use last year. You were notified." "Notified?" I snapped. "I never got any notice. You can't just annex my land." Deputy Larson sighed. "Jake, I don't want to escalate this. Can you pack up for now? We'll sort it out." Fuming, I complied, but not before snapping photos of my setup and the vehicles. Something was off, and I wasn't about to let this slide. As Karen's SUV sped off, I noticed her smug smile in the rearview mirror. This wasn't just about a camping violation. This was personal dock at my cabin. I dug through my files. The HOA, formed by the upscale neighborhood bordering my ranch, had been a thorn in my side since they built their gated community 5 years ago. They'd tried to pressure me into joining, citing community standards, but I'd refused. My land was outside their boundaries, or so I thought. The annexation claim was news to me, and I found no record of any notification. What I did find was an old survey map showing my property line clearly encompassing the lake. If anyone was trespassing, it wasn't me. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Sarah Nguyen, a sharp attorney who'd handled my family's land disputes before. "Jake, this sounds like a power grab," she said after I explained. "HOAs can't just claim private property without due process. We'll need to check their records and any public filings. In the meantime, gather evidence, photos, emails, anything showing their overreach." I spent the day combing through my property's history and found something curious. A series of complaints filed by the HOA about unauthorized access to my lake by their residents. Apparently, Karen and her cronies had been letting their members fish and boat there without my permission. The realization hit me like a freight train. They weren't just harassing me. They'd been trespassing on my land for years. The next week was a blur of research and righteous anger. I wasn't just fighting for my right to camp on my own land. I was defending my property from a group of entitled neighbors who thought they could rewrite boundaries to suit their whims. Sarah's advice echoed in my mind. Evidence was everything. I set out to build an airtight case. First, I installed motion-activated trail cameras around the lake. If the HOA was using my property, I'd catch them in the act. Sure enough, within days, the cameras captured HOA residents, some I recognized, from Karen's inner circle fishing, kayaking, and even hosting a picnic on my shore. One video showed Karen herself directing a group of kids to set up a makeshift dock. The audacity was staggering. I also visited the county recorder's office, where I pulled every document related to my property and the HOA's formation. The records confirmed my deed was clear. The lake was mine, no question. But buried in a stack of HOA meeting minutes from the previous year, I found a bombshell. The board, led by Karen, had voted to assume stewardship of the lake, claiming it was abandoned since I rarely used it. They'd filed a notice with the county, but it was sent to an old address I hadn't used in years. The move was sneaky, possibly illegal, and definitely unethical. Sarah was livid when I showed her the evidence. "This is a textbook case of adverse possession gone wrong," she said. "They're trying to claim your land by using it without permission, but they've skipped every legal step. We can sue for trespassing and challenge their annexation claim." While Sarah prepared a cease and desist letter, I decided to confront the issue head-on. The HOA's monthly meeting was coming up, and I wasn't about to miss it. Dressed in my best flannel and armed with a folder of evidence, I walked into the community center, where Karen presided over a room of well-dressed homeowners. The air grew tense as I took a seat. "Mr. Callahan," Karen said, her voice icy, "this is a private meeting." "Not when it involves my property," I replied, holding up my folder. "You've been letting your people trespass on my lake, and you tried to annex it without my consent. I've got proof videos, photos, and county records." The room erupted in murmurs. Karen's face reddened, but she doubled down. "The lake is a community asset. You've neglected it, and we've maintained it for everyone's benefit." "Maintained it?" I scoffed. "You've been stealing it. My cameras caught your people using my land without permission." "That's trespassing, Karen." A few homeowners looked uneasy, clearly unaware of the full story. One, an older man named Tom, spoke up. "Is this true, Karen? You said the lake was ours?" Before she could respond, I handed out copies of my deed and the AOS shady meeting minutes. The room grew chaotic as residents questioned Karen's leadership. She stammered, deflecting blame, but the damage was done. I left the meeting with a clear message. This wasn't over. Back at the ranch, I noticed something new: fresh tire tracks near the lake, and a section of my fence was damaged. Someone was still coming onto my property. I called Deputy Larson, who promised to look into it, but I wasn't holding my breath. The HOA wasn't going to back down easily, and I needed to be ready for their next move. Sarah filed the cease and desist letter the next day, demanding the HOA stop all access to my lake and retract their annexation claim. She also suggested we prepare for a lawsuit, as Karen's actions suggested she'd fight dirty. That night I sat by the lake staring at the water's calm surface. This was my land, my legacy. I'd inherited it from my grandfather, who'd fought his own battles to keep it free. I wasn't about to let a power-hungry HOA take it from me. The weeks that followed were a legal chess game. Sarah's cease and desist letter went unanswered, and the HOA doubled down, sending me a formal notice claiming I was liable for damages to the lake's ecosystem due to my neglect. It was laughable, but it showed their desperation. Meanwhile, my trail cameras caught more trespassers, including Karen's husband Greg, who was brazenly fishing at dawn. I was done playing nice. Sarah filed a lawsuit against the HOA for trespassing, fraud, and wrongful annexation. The evidence was overwhelming: my deed, the trail camera footage, and the HOA's own minutes admitting they bypassed proper notification. The case drew local media attention, with headlines like "Rancher Battles HOA Over Private Lake." Public sentiment leaned my way. Nobody in rural Montana liked HOAs meddling with private land. The turning point came during a county hearing to review the annexation claim. Karen and the HOA's lawyer argued that the lake was essential to the community and that I'd abandoned it by not maintaining it. Sarah dismantled their case, presenting my deed, the trail camera footage, and testimony from a surveyor confirming my property boundaries. The real kicker was Tom, the homeowner from the meeting, who testified that Karen had misled the HOA about the lake's ownership. The room went silent as he produced emails from Karen instructing residents to use the lake discreetly to avoid legal trouble. The judge ruled in my favor, declaring the annexation null and void. The HOA was ordered to pay damages for trespassing and legal fees, totaling over $50,000. Karen's reputation was in tatters, and the HOA board voted her out the following week, but I wasn't done. I posted "No trespassing" signs around the lake and installed a stronger fence, complete with a locked gate. I also sent a letter to every HOA resident, informing them of the ruling and warning that any further trespassing would result in criminal charges. A month later, I got a call from Deputy Larson. "Jake, we caught Greg Whitmore cutting your fence last night. He's in custody." Apparently, Karen had egged him on, still believing she could reclaim access to the lake. Greg's arrest was the final nail in the HOA's coffin. The community was in disarray, with many residents moving out. Tired of the drama. With the legal battle won, I finally returned to my original plan, a quiet night camping by the lake. As I sat by the fire, the stars reflected on the water, unbroken by trespassers or HOA SUVs.